Angole! Her name was whispered faintly, almost as if the wind itself had spoken. She froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the bed as she strained to hear more. The voice came again, this time louder. Angole! She gasped and looked towards the window. The silhouette of a figure stood outside, barely visible in the moonlight. Her chest tightened as fear took hold of her. Who is there? Oiora village was a peaceful place, surrounded by green hills and thick forest. The people lived simple lives, farming and fishing to support their families. Life in the village had only one strict rule: never enter Ihoji, the dark forest. The elders said it was home to angry and evil spirits. No one in the village dared to enter there. It had been like that for many years, always causing fear among the people. Angole, a lively girl of 16 years old, lived with her mother, Norma, and her younger brother, Oiora. She loved her family, but Oibiora's curious and restless nature often caused trouble. One afternoon, as the sun shone brightly over the village, Norma looked at Oiora and said, "Go and fetch firewood. We will need it for cooking tonight." "Yes, Mama," Oiora replied, though his face showed he wasn't happy about the task. He picked up a machete and walked towards the outskirts of the village, where the trees began. "Stay away from the forest," Norma called after him. "Don't go near Ihoji." "I won't, Mama," Oiora shouted back. But as he wandered further, he noticed that the best firewood were near the edge of the forbidden forest. "This isn't the forest," Oiora told himself as he stepped closer. "I am not going inside, just near it." He began gathering sticks and small logs, his hands working quickly. The trees of Ihoji stood tall and dark, their branches twisting like claws against the sky. As Oiora walked, he thought he heard something, a faint whisper. He paused and looked around, but there was no one there. "Maybe it's just the wind," he muttered, and continued gathering firewood. But the whispers grew louder, and they seemed to be calling his name. "Oiora!" He froze. His heart pounded in his chest. "Who is there?" he called out, his voice shaking. There was no answer, but the whispers didn't stop. They surrounded him, growing louder and louder. Fear gripped him, and he dropped the firewood. He turned towards the village and started running, but the forest seemed to pull him closer. When he finally stopped, he realized with horror that he had stepped into the forest. The air was cold, and the sunlight barely reached through the thick trees. Oibiora's small body trembled as he crawled up beneath a massive tree. Meanwhile, back at home, Norma noticed how late it was getting. "Where is Oiora?" she asked Angole, glancing towards the door. "He is still fetching firewood," Angole replied, though she felt something is wrong. Norma's face grew worried. "He should have been back by now. It's getting dark. Hope he won't go near the forest." "No, Mama, he won't," You warned him not to, Angol said quickly, but deep down, she wasn't sure. Mama, let me go and look for him, Angol said. I will bring him back, okay? Angol always acted more matured than her age. Be careful, Angol, Norma warned, her voice trembling. Angol looked for Oiora, where they used to fetch firewood, but she didn't see him until she saw some firewood that kept near Ihoji. Angol raced towards the edge of the forest. The trees loomed ahead like silent guards. The closer she got, the more uneasy she felt. Oiora! She called as she stepped into the shadows. The forest was silent, except for the sound of her voice echoing back. Then, faintly, she heard him. Angol! She followed the sound, her heart pounding. Finally, she found him, sitting under a giant tree, shivering. Oiora, she gasped, rushing to his side. What are you doing here? I heard voices, he whispered, pointing into the darkness. They were calling me. Angol's stomach tightened with fear. But she gripped his hand. Let's go home now. The whispers seemed to follow them as they hurried back. When they finally reached the village, Norma was waiting at the door. She hugged Oiora tightly, her face filled with relief and fear. What happened? She asked gently. What took you so long? Angol told her mother where she found Oiora. Norma screamed. What? I warned you not to go near the forest, Oiora. You have killed me. I heard voices calling my name, Mama. It wasn't my intention to go there, Oiora whispered, his voice trembling. They were all around me. Norma's face grew pale. The spirit, she murmured, Ihoji does not forgive. Angol sat quietly, her heart still racing. She had saved her brother, but deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of something much worse. The morning sun rose over Ohozala village. Birds sang in the trees, and the goats bleated as children ran to the stream. But today, the village was not happy. People were afraid. They heard that Oiora had gone into the forbidden forest, Ihoji, and returned with a strange story. Everyone gathered at the big tree in the middle of the village. The men stood with their arms crossed, and the women whispered to one another. Norma stood close to her children. She held Oiora's hand tightly, while Angol stood on her other side. The oldest man in the village, Elder Nnamdi, sat on a wooden stool. He had a grey hair and a long walking stick. His face looked serious. Tell us what happened, Elder Nnamdi said, his deep voice making the crowd go silent. He looked at Norma. My son was sent to fetch firewood, Norma said, her voice shaking. I told him not to go near Ihoji, but he didn't listen. She looked down at Oiora. Elder Nnamdi turned to the boy. Oiora, he said kindly, come here. Oiora hesitated. He clutched his mother's wrapper tightly. Norma gave him a little push, and he stepped forward slowly. What did you see in the forest? Elder Nnamdi asked. Oiora looked at the ground. His voice was soft. I heard voices. They were calling my name. The villagers gasped. "Who called you?" Elder Namdi asked. "I don't know," Oiora whispered. "I thought it was someone from the village, but when I looked, no one was there." The crowd began to whisper. "The forest spirits," someone shouted. Oiora started to cry. "I got scared. I tried to run, but it felt like something was pulling me back." "The spirits are angry," an older woman cried out. "Quiet," Elder Namdi said, raising his hand. The crowd became silent. The village dibia stepped forward. He wore a white robe and carried a small gourd. His face looked very serious. "The boy has disturbed the spirit," Dibia said. "The spirit of Ihoji does not forgive easily. We must make peace with them." "What do we do?" a man in the crowd asked. "We will give them gifts," Dibia said. "Palm oil, yams, and a white goat. These will calm their anger." That evening, the villagers gathered at the shrine near the forest. The shrine was a small clay house with marks of the gods on its walls. Bowls of palm wine and yam were placed in the front of it. A white goat stood nearby, tied to a wooden post. Dibia began to sing in a deep voice. He poured palm oil on the ground and sprinkled white chalk on the yam. Then he took a knife and killed the goat. Its blood ran into the earth. The villagers watched quietly. The forest was silent. When the ceremony ended, Elder Namdi asked, "Is it done?" "We have done our part. We hope for the best," Dibia said. Angoli held Oiora's hand tightly. She looked at the dark forest and felt cold inside. She knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. That night, as Angoli lay in her small bed, the moonlight streamed through the cracks in the thatch roof, casting eerie pattern on the walls. Oiora was sleeping soundly beside their mother, but his restless whimpers kept echoing in Angoli's mind. She could not forget the fear in his eyes or the strange whispers she had heard in the forest. No matter how much she tried to reassure herself, the feeling of being watched stayed with her. Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears. It was a soft rustling, like leaves brushing against each other. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the sound grew louder and closer. She sat up, her heart pounding. "Angole!" Her name was whispered faintly, almost as if the wind itself had spoken. She froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the bed as she strained to hear more. The voice came again, this time louder. "Angole!" She gasped and looked towards the window. The silhouette of a figure stood outside, barely visible in the moonlight. Her chest tightened as fear took hold of her. "Who is there?" she called, her voice shaking. There was no answer, only the rustling sound again. The figure disappeared, fading into the night like smoke. Angoli jumped out of the bed and rushed to Norma's room. "Mama," she whispered, shaking her mother to wake. "What is it?" Norma asked groggily, sitting up. "There is something outside," Angoli said, her voice trembling. Norma's eyes widened. She quickly lit a lantern and stepped outside with Angoli. The yard was eerily quiet. The shadows from the trees swirling gently in the breeze. There was no sign of anyone. "Are you sure you saw something?" Norma asked. Her voice tinged with worry. "I am sure, Mama. They whispered my name," Angol replied, clutching her mother's arm tightly. Norma sighed and guided her back inside. "It must be your imagination, my child. The events of the forest have unsettled you." Angol nodded reluctantly, but deep down, she knew what she had seen was real. The next morning, Angol shared her experience with Elder Nnamdi. He listened carefully, his face growing more serious with each word. "The spirits may be trying to communicate with you. You have entered their domain, and now they see you as one of their own." Angol's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means you are marked," Nnamdi said gravely. "If you continue to ignore their call, it could bring disaster to the entire village." "What do I do?" Angol asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You must go back to Ihoji and find out what the spirits want," Nnamdi said. "But you cannot go alone. I will ask Dibia to go with you." Fear gripped Angol's heart. Returning to the forest was the last thing she wanted, but she knew she had no choice. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Angol prepared for her journey. The whispers of the forest were calling her back, and she had to answer. Oiora insisted on coming with her. "It is my fault," he said, his face set with determination. "I went into the forest first. I should help fix it." "No," Norma said firmly, shaking her head. "You are too young, Oiora. This journey is not for you." "But Mama..." "No argument," Norma interrupted, her voice thin. "Angol will not go alone. Elder Nnamdi had arranged for Dibia to accompany her." Angol felt a wave of relief and fear, while the thought of traveling with the powerful Dibia gave her some comfort. The idea of stepping into the Ihoji again filled her with dread. The villagers gathered at the edge of the forest to see them off. Dibia carried a small calabash filled with sacred items, white chalk, kola nut, and a burning incense stick that trailed in thin ribbon of smoke. Angol followed behind him, clutching a small bag of provisions. As they entered the forest, the familiar coldness washed over her. The air seemed heavier, the whispers louder. Dibia moved with purpose, his chant soft but steady. Angol tried to stay close, but the trees seemed to close in around them, their branches clawing at their clothes. "Stay focused," Dibia said without turning around. "The spirits are watching." Suddenly, a figure darted across their path. Angol yelped, but Dibia raised a hand to calm her. "Do not be afraid," he said. "They will not harm us unless provoked." "What was that?" Angol asked, her voice shaking. "A spirit," Dibia replied. "It is testing our courage." They pressed on, the whispers growing louder with each step. Soon, they reached a clearing where a massive tree stood. Its trunk was wide and gnarled, its branches stretching towards the sky like skeletal arms. "This is the heart of Ihoji," Dibia said, kneeling before the tree. "The spirits reside here." He sprinkled white chalk around the base of the tree and placed the calabash on the ground. Then he began to chant, his voice rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. Angole watched in silence, her heart pounding. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. The forest grew deathly quiet. A deep resonant voice echoed through the clearing. "Why have you come?" Dibia remained calm, his head bowed. "We seek your forgiveness," he said. "A child of this village entered your domain unknowingly. We offer ourselves in humility." The voice laughed, a low chilling sound. "Forgiveness comes at a price." It said, "I want the girl to stay with us. That's our demand." Angole's blood ran cold. She looked at Dibia, hoping he would refuse. But the Dibia's face was grave. "You want the girl? Why? She is only a child. What can we do to appease you?" The spirit screamed, "Nothing can be done, or we will destroy you all." The voice from the tree echoed in the quiet forest. Angole felt her knees tremble. The forest spirit wanted her to stay behind. But why? She looked at Dibia, hoping he would say no. Dibia took a deep breath. He bowed his head and spoke calmly. "Great Spirit, why must she stay?" The voice laughed. It was cold, deep sound. "Your people have disturbed our home. The forest does not forgive. To make things right, she must remain with us forever." Angole felt her heart sink. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The air was heavy, like it was pushing her down. "Great Spirit, please, we mean no harm," Dibia said. "We only wish to bring peace." The voice replied, "No peace without sacrifice." Angole looked at Dibia with wide eyes. "What do we do?" she whispered. Dibia sighed. "I will speak to them, Angole, but you must stay quiet." He took a small kola nut from his calabash and broke it into two. He placed the pieces on the ground in front of the tree and began to chant softly. The tree seemed to hum as though it was alive. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "We will give you another way, but it will not be easy." "What is it?" Dibia asked. "You must prove your loyalty to the forest." The voice said, "Bring us a gift, something precious to your village." "What kind of gift?" Dibia asked carefully. "The sacred drum," the voice answered. "It has the power to calm us. Bring it to the forest before the next full moon. If you fail, we will come for the girl." Angole gasped. The sacred drum was kept in the shrine. It was old and very important to the village. Taking it would anger the elders. Dibia nodded slowly. "We will bring the drum." He said that to appease them and go back and think of another way. The forest fell silent again. The whispers faded and the heavy air lifted. "It is done," Dibia said, standing up. "Let us go." As they walked back, Angole couldn't stop thinking about what the spirits had said. She felt like a dark shadow was following her. Will the villagers Let us take the drum, she asked Dibia. It is possible, he replied. The elders would not agree. When they reached the village, Norma ran to them. She hugged Angole tightly. Thank the gods you are safe. Angole told her mother everything. Norma's face turned pale. The sacred drum? But the elders would never allow it. Dibia nodded. We must speak to them first. The spirits have given us no choice. That night, the villagers gathered around the fire to hear their story. When Dibia explained what the spirits wanted, and the people began to murmur, fear and anger filled the air. The sacred drum cannot leave the shrine. One elder shouted, it is the heart of our village. But if we don't take it, the spirits will come for Angole. The Dibia said. The crowd fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Angole. Her heart sank as she realized they were weighing her life against the sacred drum. The village square was crowded, but no one spoke loudly. Fear and confusion filled the air. Everyone wanted to know what the elders would decide about the spirit's demand. Elder Nnamdi stood in the center, his face serious. The other elders sat beside him, their heads bent in thought. The sacred drum has been in our shrine for generations, Elder Nnamdi began. It is the pride of our people. We cannot let it leave this village. Norma stepped forward, her voice shaking. But what about my daughter? The spirits said they would take her if we do not bring the drum. She held Angole close, as if trying to shield her. The villagers began murmuring among themselves. Some nodded in agreement with Norma, while others looked uneasy. Dibia stepped forward. The spirits are not bluffing. If we do not obey, they could punish the entire village, not just Angole. An elder named Maze Okachukwu shook his head. We cannot act in fear, he said. The drum is sacred. It has protected us for many years. To give it to the spirits will bring shame to our ancestors. But refusing may bring disaster, Dibia replied. The murmuring grew louder. Some villagers shouted that the drum should stay in the shrine. Others argued that Angole's life was more important. The spirits would not stop at one life. One man cried, they could curse the entire village. And if we lose the drum, we lose part of who we are. Another shouted back, enough! Elder Nnamdi raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. This is not an easy decision, he said, but we cannot give away our sacred drum. It is the heart of our people. Instead, we will pray and offer sacrifices to appease the spirits. Perhaps they will show us mercy. A heavy silence followed. Norma's face was pale with anger and fear. She stepped forward again. And if the spirits don't show mercy, what happens to my child then? We will protect her, Elder Nnamdi replied. The gods are on our side. Dibia sighed, his face dark with worry. The spirits were clear in their demand, he said. Prayers and sacrifices may not be enough. It is a risk we must take, Maazị Okachukwu said firmly. The crowd began to disperse, but Angoli could feel their eyes on her. Some people looked at her with pity, but others avoided her gaze altogether.